Hello and welcome to the birth of a new dimension. My name is Aurora, and each week I come here, I flap my moving mouth parts, and I send these ideas into your neurology, and I also vibrate the strings of my DNA in a particular dance that I call the Flying Rainbow Lasagna Dance. Brief pause. And it is ethical for me to be here doing this dance and emitting these vibrations because that is the context that we're all here for. We are in a symphony of life. We're submerged within this symphony of life, and we are surrounded by many, many organisms that all have vibrating strings of DNA. And I'll also even go further. I mean, there are life forms that do not contain DNA, but that still emit vibrations, like if we were to consider crystals or the mineral realm. So, and that's at such a consciousness that is at such a tiny microscopic level that it might be hard for the macroscopic multicellular organic organism to recognize it. But if those little tiny minerals were not alive and conscious and active in places like the soil where plants are growing with their roots, then we would not be able to sustain life on this planet. So all of these amazing entities or organisms are vibrating around us. You're submerged within the sea of life. You're submerged within this symphony of vibrations, and we are all affecting one another. So it is ethical for me to be here in this body using these DNA strands to play a particular song and to have that song affect the other human beings around me, the plants and animals around me, the microbes around me, the viruses and mineral life around me, and even affecting this planet on a macroscopic scale, like believe it or not, one little voice, one little organism on a planet doing its own particular dance or movement or vibration can have a profound impact on everyone. And this is the whole point. I'm doing a bit of justification here. I'm also trying to explain the idea of the interconnectedness of all of the organisms that are here and all of these organisms through time. And that gets a little bit into my motivation, like the ethics and motivation. Why am I here? Why am I allowed to be here? Oh, P.S. If you're new, I'm a walk-in, but lately I've been saying instead of a walk-in, I say I'm a galactic abstraction. So that means that ordinarily I am not in a one-headed, two-armed, two-legged body here on the surface of Earth. I'm usually at a different scale and in an abstract format. An abstract means light and sound and a moving polygon that has ideas and vibrations. So the basic story of my, being contained in this container at this moment has to do with the invention of a shape. And the shape is called the Flying Rainbow Lasagna. Now, let me also say this. If this is the first radio show of mine that you're listening to, if it's the first time that you're being lasagnified, or that's when I jokingly say that I'm emitting these vibrations that are affecting other people, I'm lasagnifying them. But you can lasagnify yourself by exposing yourself to these ideas. And these ideas, these are just like, put down my little thing here, they're just like music. That when you hear music, it's not only vibrating the tiny little strings in the cochlea of your ears, it's also vibrating your diaphragm and the bottoms of your feet and your cell membranes. It's affecting you on a profound level. And, just very briefly, here in this time and place, we have the standardized musical tuning where this note right here, A, is tuned to 440 hertz, but let me just grab my apparatus, hopefully I won't be jiggling anything too loudly, and move over here. Here I am at my resonant instrument that is tuned to 432 hertz. It is shaped like a xylophone. I'm going to strike this note now, and you can hear what the note of 432 hertz sounds and feels like. So just very briefly, with harmonics and our own physical body and organic cell structure, we feel a lot happier when we listen to music or sounds that are tuned to 8 hertz. And 8 hertz, this has to do with the Schumann resonance, the natural resonance between the surface of Earth, like with soil where plants grow, and the stratosphere, the high levels of the atmosphere. And Earth acts literally like a bell, like a resonant instrument. And every time she gets struck by lightning, the sound of the bell increases. And that ringing sound, the ringing sound of our planet, is the Schumann resonance. And ordinarily, it hovers around 8 hertz. And so we, being tiny microscopic fractal little, facets of this much larger planet upon which we find ourselves, our brains, our neurology, functions much more comfortably at a level when we are being exposed to frequencies that are a multiple or a divisor of 8 because of the 8 hertz. So if you can multiply a number by 8 or divide it by 8, then it means we get whole integers. We don't have any ugly sounding fractions hanging over the end, especially no ugly fractions like 0.3 repeating or 0.6 repeating. I don't have any, it's not that these numbers are bad or wrong in any way. It's like 1/3 or, 2/3, but it's the idea of having these endlessly repeating decimal, fractions that are going off. Our ears can hear that, and it makes a slight dissonance or a sense of being, let's say, uncomfortable as opposed to perfectly comfortable. And all of this affects our mind and the functioning of our mind, our feelings, like your basic emotions, and also our senses and our perception. So all of these instruments that are the standard tuning, like my piano over here, that's tuned to 440, and 440 does not divide in a nice, happy, pretty way by the number 8. And so that is why as I go down the scale in my piano, these sounds, to me, they sound less bright and wonderful and a bit more muddy and muddled up. And this is music in the Western world since World War II. That in the 1800s, there was a symphonic movement to tune music to 432 hertz, but it was changed after World War II because it was recognized, actually, by the people that officially standardized music, that these dissonant tones create emotional perturbations in the listeners and often make them more easily controllable. So it was basically for purposes of mind control. Brief pause. But I bring up all of that backstory on harmonics in order to get across the idea that some frequencies and some combinations of notes, some chords, are happy and comfortable for us to listen to and be exposed to, and some are, like, let's say, make it harder for one to think clearly, and they're antithetical to good health. And, also there's the difference between organized waves. We call this music because these are sound waves that are organized, and if I do this, that sounds terrible. Those are not organized sound waves. That's just me mashing my fist into the keyboard. So if we relate all of these ideas of harmonics and frequencies and waves that fit together perfectly into the time field, if we relate these ideas to the idea that you have a sea of uncollapsed waveforms, that is the 5th dimension and higher, and that this is the music of the cosmos. It's the music of time. And so music is an immersive experience. We can have music in kind of like in 2 formats. I can have the musical score that looks like a bunch of black dots, across the musical staff, across a bunch of lines, the way that music has been portrayed before recording apparatuses were invented. And that's like the abstract blueprint of what music can be. But the actual notes themselves are something that we experience as we move through time. So we can look at a musical score and we can see every single one of the notes of a song being, what all of the notes are at once. When we hear the notes, we hear them first one, then the next one, then the next one. So on the musical score, we would see those all written down. Our eye would perceive them all at once. But when we hear them, we are experiencing this submerged in time. So first note, then second note, then third note, then fourth note. And this is also how we can understand the time field, that there is a blueprint of time that is like the potential for experience, or the notes written on the staff. And then there's what we are actually doing with our instrument. Your physical body is your instrument, and your mind and your perception and your genes and all of that. And we are submerged within the moment where we're in the time field. We're experiencing the symphony. And we are not just the audience members experiencing this music, like washing over us. We are also participants. Like I say, we have our own body. Your body is your instrument, and your body is not just your physical layer of your body. We have a multi-layered body. And so it's actually a simplification to say that we have 7 basic layers. We do have 7 basic layers. And that's like if I generalize and I say, you have these basic physical organs of your body. You have the circulatory system, and you have the heart, and you have the arteries and the veins. And, that's a simplification, because what you actually have are your heart has 4 different chambers and 7 layers of muscles, and your arteries branch down into very fine capillaries. And there's an incredibly complex system that circulates all of this blood and energy and vitality throughout your body. So when I talk about the chakra system, chakra just means spinning wheel of energy, the system of energy centers on your body that's actually connected to your time body or your non-physical body that is made of potential, the uncollapsed waveforms of a higher world. I've got it subdivided into 7 layers: red, orange, yellow, green, blue, indigo, and violet. That is a simplification. And it's just a simplification for ease of conversation in, presenting this information. So I'm just like when I do my online webinars, I do diagrams, and that's a good segue. I do a little brief plug. My webinars are called Lessons for Full Spectrum Humans. And the idea is that each one of us is a full spectrum human, from red all the way up through the colors of the rainbow to violet, as opposed to, in most of recorded human history, humanity has been defined as a physical body with mammalian emotions and a human intellect on top of that. And that's red, orange, and yellow. And for a very long time, humanity was not even recognized as containing the potential for what I define as the higher faculties. And that's green, unconditional love, and everything that rests upon that, like an apparatus or a set of gears. That is how we perceive and speak and connect to the higher dimensional, less dense realm, because those higher faculties, the violet, dark blue, turquoise blue, and greenish foundation, those have been inhibited. That is part of what I call jokingly the genetic squashing that happened between 10 and 20,000 years ago. And I jokingly refer to it in that way, but this is also primary trauma on our planet, that genetic squashing was part of an invasion of consciousness, an invasion of energy, and also a literal invasion of the human genome, or the pattern of DNA, the dance of DNA, because of what I'm talking about in the earlier part of this broadcast, that we are all musicians in a big symphony. We're all affecting one another, and this is the ethics of it. Something else came to our planet and heavily affected everyone here in a very, very horrible way. And it is so horrible that it has pretty much created the pain and suffering and turmoil and degradation of the past 10,000 years, containing all of what is known as recorded human history. So all of the wars and conflicts and death, I talk about this all the time on this show. And just let me do a brief pause to save my work. Talk about this all the time, that death is the aberration. Death is the thing that is not supposed to actually exist. And in my own personal experience of having a beloved cat here on earth and then experiencing her death and experiencing the grief process, I can tell you that it gave me a type of psychosis, a type of not being connected to reality, that profound loss, because I loved my cat a lot and my heart was intertwined, like the literal emissions of my body and my heart were intertwined with her emissions. And that's what real love is. Real love is a tone. It's a musical tone, and it's the tone that we achieve when what we are giving out is equal to what we are receiving. So we can perform unconditional love with our context, with our environment. You can perform unconditional love with the time field. And when we do that, what we're doing is, if you are ingesting 1 unit of time, you emit 1 unit of time. It's like, imagine Pac-Man, that old video game. Pac-Man is going through its little tunnels and it is chomping away, eating 1 little white dot, and then it moves on to the next little white dot. And each of those dots could be considered like a moment of time. And if we are practicing unconditional love, we move through time at 1 moment per moment. We are moving at exactly the right rate so that we are not grasping forward. I'm not trying to reach 5 dots ahead. That's called anxiety. That's anxiety. That's when you reach forward into the future in a fearful and questing way. What's going to happen? What about this? What about this? All of that is reaching forward. And nor is it this clinging to the past. I'm not trying to hold on to something that happened 5 dots ago. That could be emotional residue, or it could be associated with loss of energy. It's like having sandbags that hold you down from being able to move at the correct rate. And that's the basic story of what most humans are experiencing through their life. That humans have as they move through time, collect more and more trauma, more and more, let's call it, undigested emotional experiences. So when we have an emotional experience, it does not have to lodge within us. It can flow through us. Just like if you eat a hamburger and you are a wonderful athlete, you metabolize that hamburger. It turns into muscle fibers. It turns into kinetic energy that your body uses, and then you expel all the waste that you don't need into the toilet. That doesn't stay with you. As opposed to imagine a person who eats the hamburger but never actually exercises or uses their energy. The hamburger gets turned into the stored up energy of fatty deposits. And I am not offending or harming anyone. I love fat and I love fat people. And this is not to say that it's using the analogies of that there is a stored energy, potential solidified energy that has not been liberated, like in the form of movement or kinetic energy. So that is what we're talking about, that most people move through life accumulating emotional experiences that they have not processed. They're wearing all of their hamburgers instead of actually processing them. And the emotional experience, it's anything. It's having a conversation. It's socializing with other people. It can be something negative, like if someone punches you in the face, that's definitely a hamburger that you're going to have to eat and process. It can also be something wonderful, like, whatever, kissing someone or having a great friendship or, running with a dog on a beach. Any of those experiences are emotional food that we have to process. And just hold on a second. To go a little bit more into my own, personal story. So I'm here as this galactic abstraction. What am I doing here? I'm vibrating like a flying rainbow lasagna. I'm affecting the DNA and, vibratory time field and emotion and perception field of this planet. And I'm also accumulating emotional experiences and I'm processing them. The idea, it is not like we want to wear all of our hamburgers so that we can take them with us into the next world. You don't take with you the act or into the next experience, let's say, because when people say into the next world, they think death. You have to die in order to get into the next world. But I'm trying to give everyone here the map for the landscape and also the keys to your own vehicle so that you can drive your own vehicle and navigate the landscape. And that's what all my paintings are. You can check out my paintings if you go to flyingrainbowlasagna.com and click on the art there. And there's really detailed images that you can zoom in on and see, because each one of my paintings, it can take 6 months or a year to actually do the drawing and do all of the painting in it. And it contains many, many exact calibrations. That's what the word I'm coming up with is calibrations. That these images are not merely approximations of what this landscape looks like. And also, when sometimes people look at these paintings and they think, oh, that's just a pretty pattern, or that's just an abstract pattern. And I'm trying to tell you, it's an actual place. I'm actually a representational artist. And I am painting detailed photographic images of a place that doesn't look like this place that we're familiar with. And it's an interior realm. And it's amazing. I've been, in the past couple of months or weeks, really connecting much more than ever before with other people that have visited that interior realm, and they find my work and they say, that's exactly what I see behind my own eyelids, or that's exactly what I see when I'm in a visionary or meditative experience, or when I am dancing a transcendent dance. So that is, it is wonderful. It's corroboration and confirmation that it's certainly not something that I am merely fabricating or making up in my own way. Yeah, I mean, it would be wonderful to do that. I cannot take the credit for that. Perhaps if I dilated the scale of my identity to include like myself as the whole cosmos, all of the galaxies, all of that star energy, then I would say, oh yes, I as that giant thing am the thing that made this. I, in the container of Aurora, I am a perceiver. I perceived the wonderful music, and I learned the musical score. I made these paintings, and the Flying Rainbow Lasagna is what I can take credit for as my own original riff in this big symphony. So that's the big thing that I'm trying to get across here. It is totally appropriate to innovate. It's a formalized composition. Like classical music, it's a formalized composition, and it's also something that responds in the moment and innovates like jazz. And I love jazz, and part of learning about jazz music is seeing how the musicians integrate and collaborate with one another. They start off with a basic structure that might be these 4 notes. And then within those 4 notes, they will find all sorts of new and interesting combinations to be able to collaborate and come up with something new. So the Flying Rainbow Lasagna, this is the equivalent of innovating or jazz improv on top of the basic musical score that has already been established in the cosmos. And that basic musical score is the symphony of life. What we're all experiencing, plants and animals and insects and blue whales and redwood trees and microbes and all of that, and quartz crystals and water and every level of consciousness, that is the symphony of life that we are experiencing here and collaborating with. So your body is your instrument, and no one else can tell you what you are and are not allowed to do with your own instrument. That is a really big one. So we're moving into this new age, this new social context. When I say new age, oh my goodness, I'm finding out also there's a lot of negative connotations with the term new age. So let's say we're starting a new chapter, we're moving into a new approach. In this new approach, we do not require external authority figures. So in the previous context, everybody was blind and everybody was domesticated. They were like dogs with their minds on a leash, and the person holding the leash, like the master, was a construct. That's not real God, but like is a lowercase g God. The God of the Bible, the God of the Jewish and Christian stories. That's I think most people have come to the conclusion of, in reading the Bible, that the descriptions of that godly being, sometimes he seems pretty angry, sometimes he seems kind of capricious or arbitrary. The idea of telling people, go down into that land and kill all the people there and take their land, and now that's your land and you're named the Israelites. I'm giving a rather simplified and lighthearted portrayal of the inconsistencies of the Bible in order to get, I've spoken about this at length and extensively, the idea that these religions are not programs or, software programs or sets of ideas that are meant to lead to eventual liberation, that they are meant to be control systems that keep your mind on a leash and lead to an eventual harvesting of your ideas and energy and physical self into you could call it an astral realm. It's analogous to a virtual reality. And this virtual reality, would be analogous to Christian heaven, a perfect place where there's nothing ever goes wrong and you're sitting on a cloud. And it's like, Aurora, why would I not want that? That sounds really quite pleasant and quite nice. Yes. After living under such great duress in a physical body that is not effectively connected to the source of divinity and vitality, yes, it sounds really nice to just get uploaded to some nice fantasy land where you sit on a cloud and strum a harp and everything is fine. Real heaven is a state of total freedom where you are not limited or bound or stuck, where you get to fly freely and have complete latitude and move in any direction that you want, and to create on a profound level anything that you want. So it's like the difference between having to run around in a circle, like a person that is a track runner running around the track, and a person who is free and who runs whatever, a marathon trekking through the mountains and streams and everything. Those are two radically different experiences. And so I would say the virtual reality, false heaven, Christian fantasy land, or, and the afterlife of Christianity, Judaism did not have a teaching about the afterlife. It just described a wandering gray place called Sheol, which is analogous to the Tibetan Bardo. And it was not until the invention of Christianity and the Christian belief system that people started to believe in this heaven versus hell, reward or punishment afterlife. And that's all running around in circles. Your whole entire afterlife, you get to run around in circles. And that's not true freedom. So dropping those belief systems and those programs and moving into a new set of ideas, this is starting a new chapter. And in this new chapter, humanity does not require an externalized authority figure, because you're not a dog with your mind on a leash. You're now a wolf. And dogs and wolves are fundamentally different. We've changed dogs through selective breeding so that their digestion and their food and their teeth and their skin and their vulnerabilities to insects and disease, they require partnership with humans in order to be alive. And some dogs are so heavily domesticated that they cannot even reproduce the next generation without assistance from humanity. Like English bulldogs, their pelvises can't even give birth anymore. They're all cesarean. So humans and dogs now have a profound reliance upon one another. Dogs can, if you see any of these tragic stories about dogs that are found, living on a garbage pile and they get rescued, I watch every one of them and I cry, and I want all of them to be rescued. Care about all of them, because they're all aspects of consciousness, and that's like all of these dogs that are not being cared for, and any person that is not being cared for, it all accumulates. It's all music in this beautiful symphony. And when one instrument is not being cared for, it has an effect on the entire symphony. So if you look at any of these videos about dogs that are being neglected and they end up looking terrible, they get totally infested with fleas and they get a skin condition called mange, and it's because they haven't been bathed and they haven't been brushed and combed or have some pesticide to keep away the fleas. Wolves do not require that. Wolves do not require weekly flea baths or being brushed by their human owner or anything like that. They are themselves. They don't need to have any help from you or me. So this is very different. So humans right now might feel like they need help from some external deity or some high up, man in the sky. I always joke about that. Man with a beard, man in the sky. And I understand the sense of inner confusion that a person has that does not have their higher faculties activated. I understand the comfort that would be derived from imagining or envisioning that there is a loving, bearded man that's watching you while you do what you do during the day, and might even be holding your hand or, help you through if you are feeling especially, painful or difficult experiences. I understand why humans require that, for security and for a sense of, it helps one's feelings. It's like a sense of emotional support. We need to become more emotionally mature and move into this new chapter where it's not like you don't need emotional support. Everybody needs emotional support, but it's about being true to yourself and listening to your own inner guidance as opposed to an external authority figure. So I'll use my artwork as an example. So I paint from my own inner vision, and I paint what I simply know I need to do. I do the projects I know I need to do. So the color scheme and the choice of which patterns I do and how large I'm working and everything about it, I'm doing it because my inner promptings tell me to do it. And we can contrast that with an artist that might paint only on commission, like someone who does portraits of pets. There's nothing wrong with that art at all. It's a beautiful, way of helping other people and using your creativity. It's also a very different type of artwork where you need to work for your client. If they bring you a picture of a bulldog, you need to make sure that you paint your portrait to actually look like their bulldog and not to actually look like a German Shepherd. So these are different approaches to making artwork. So and they're both equally valid approaches. I do not mean to demean other people that do their work differently than me. But in your life, you should be the artist of your life. And you should not have to make your life for anybody else's convenience. If your life is your artistic expression and your body is your instrument or your, modality of expressing your creativity. No one else should be dictating to you what you're doing with your body or how you do it or when you do it. And this is the freedom that we're talking about here. So we're moving into a new context where each person needs to be their own boss and each person needs to take radical self-responsibility. And that's what the flying rainbow lasagna is, because you get a pencil with an eraser that you can use in order to edit your own DNA and genetic structure. And I describe this a lot too, the idea that DNA is a moving, dancing integument that ties together your flight through time from moment to moment. So becoming the auteur or the script writer and director and producer of your own movie script of your life, this is about creating the events that you wish to happen. So I'm not just talking about like, oh, I want to change my DNA. I want to go from being brown eyes to having blue eyes or something like that. No, and that's a very mundane imagining. Like, it doesn't matter because you still have the same color eyes. You still have to deal with all of this nonsense of, the economy and religion and banking and government. So what I am proposing with Flying Rainbow Lasagna is an opportunity to rearrange the events of one's life. And this is incredibly threatening to the people that uphold and are in love with the status quo. We could call them the powers that be, the powers that were, the elite, the cabal, the dark magicians, whatever vocabulary word we're using for these, these beings, that these are the people that have been in charge for all of recorded human history, and they have been the overlords of humanity, and they have been, socially sculpting. They've been treating you like a social sculpture, like you are just this thing to manipulate and exploit. And that's because, humanity has this wonderful creative energy, and humanity has the capacity to envision the future. And it is our creative partnership with the cosmos and the time field that actually makes time happen, that makes the experience of time happen. So hijacking and exploiting our natural proclivities are what these overlords have done. And they took the natural ability to dance with your DNA, envision what you would like to experience, and then manifest it. And they took that away. Let's say they circumvented it. So the degradation of the higher faculties means that we are like driving a car, but we can't actually put our hands on the steering wheel, can't actually see through the windshield. That's a really dangerous, terrible way to drive your car. And that is why so many human beings crash into the membrane of death. And if you're new to all of this, the terms that I'm using, the membrane of death is a flowing, like waterfall of energy that exists as the boundary of the time vortex. And the time vortex is shaped kind of like a pointy circus tent. And the point at the top of the circus tent is infinity. And this vortex, we are spiraling up this vortex, exploring every single possible iteration of our life choices, our behaviors and our thoughts and our belief systems and everything that's basically the steering wheel or the control mechanism for what makes you be on one timeline as opposed to another timeline. So some of these timelines are just about basic biological life. When you're a little tiny child, you're not making intellectual decisions, but you are making biological decisions. Your body needs to learn how to protect you from pathogens. Like right after you're born, you're a little tiny infant. You don't necessarily die because you think the wrong thought or anything like that. Usually infants die because of something like an infectious disease. Their immune system needs to learn. That's what it is. So a lot of this in the beginning is exploring every single possible iteration and the periphery of just how to have a body. And then once we start to gain an intellect and verbal capacity, then it becomes easy, like the learning curve gets easier. Because you can read signs. If something says poison, do not drink, you learn, don't drink it. So now we think about like all the toddlers that eat poison and all the times that, and so now you're understanding, you get past all of those times, and then you get to be a capricious teenager and think about all the times you drove unsafely as a teenager, playing your music too loud in a car when you were 16 years old, and all the times that you could have literally crashed your car and died and then had to learn to approach life differently. So this is like Groundhog's Day in your life, that movie Groundhog's Day, just not circulating within one 24-hour period, but that you are constantly having to circulate back around. When you die, you don't die. That's the whole point that I'm trying to get across with this model of the time field. I'm telling you, this is a map so that you can use it to navigate effectively. So I'm trying to also get across this idea that religions might portray death as a type of liberation or a release. And I also understand that our lives here in the physical world were not meant to be some horrible, drudge, some grim death march. It was not meant to be like that at all. But I understand, hey, if you can't put your hands on the steering wheel and you cannot see through the windscreen, then life is not a very fun ride to experience. It's much more fun when you can actually be an empowered participant and control where you're going and avoid the membrane of death. So it's very difficult and very uncomfortable to be in this position. And so I understand why people that are here would be like, oh, just get me out of here. And the escapism, usually it can be sometimes like, oh, just let me die and get out of here. But sometimes it's Lord Jesus, take me away. And more modernly, sometimes it's UFO, take me away. Space Jesus, take me away. The idea of having to get out of here somehow. And so I'm going to tell you that all of those programs, the idea that your body is gross and wrong and bad and inherently flawed, that's not truthful. And it's a calculated deceit that has been given to you. And also the idea that liberation comes through death and that you have to get off of the planet somehow to be free. None of those things are truthful. Those are all like the opposite. It's throwing away things that are very, very valuable. So our physical body is very, very valuable. And right now, many people might feel burdened by their physical body because it's not functioning at optimum levels. So I certainly understand that feeling. And it's programmed in, just like the humans who genetically manipulated wolves into dogs, programmed in certain tendencies, like the tendency to be calm as opposed to being like very alert. And, think about a super mellow golden retriever. They have floppy ears and they their tongue is kind of wagging out of their mouth and they're happy and friendly. They're not like extremely tightly wound, dogs that their nerves are coiled and they're ready to pounce at a moment's instant. Like humans have created this domesticated golden retriever format so that it contains the characteristics that are convenient to humans. Am I getting through to you? I'm sure that I am. It's the idea that humans right now are the domesticated version of what humans could be when we are our undomesticated wolfin format. And these personality characteristics are convenient to the controllers. They are not necessarily inherently good or what you're supposed to be at all. They're just what is convenient to the people that made you in this format. So programmed into the diminished human genetic format, the domesticated format, is this sense of bodily hatred, bodily disappointment, and this religious expectation exacerbates the sense that in order to really be free, you have to get rid of your body. And your body, I'm trying to say, is your instrument. Like the guitar is the physical thing that has strings that emits the sound, and the song is the non-physical thing. Our bodies are the physical instrument that emits the song of our life. And getting rid of your body, this is like getting rid of your instrument. It's not advisable. Actually, what we're supposed to do is tune our instrument. We're supposed to make our instrument work much better so that the experience of being here is much more fun and expanded and comfortable. Like at the very least, when I speak about flying rainbow lasagna, and it's not just a concept, it is a verb or an activity that we can all pursue, and you do it with your body. So it is I say it is like a dance. It's a literal dance. It's a dance that you do with the vibrating strings of your DNA, and it creates an emotional feeling, and it's also a dance that you can perform macroscopically by actually moving your arms and your legs and your body and your spine. But when I share the dance movements with people, it is much more about the feeling that is being generated as opposed to fitting your arms and legs into a formalized format. So it's not like being a figure skater. It's not like you just have to make sure that your arms and legs follow prescribed patterns and then that's all that matters. What really matters is what your mind is doing, what you're doing with your capacity to envision, and imagine using your higher faculties, and what you are doing with your emotions, and what you're doing, when I say on a genetic level. It's hard to even put this into words, but we are always resonating with our ancestors and with our possible descendants. So this is, we're submerged within this fabric of time. So it can be, and all of this is also intimate partnership. When I speak about these things, these are not mere intellectual approaches, and it's not something that is done without love. I mean, all of this has to be done with love, just like procreation is meant to be done with love, even though I understand we're in a very distorted world where that's not necessarily the case. But all of this reality creation is supposed to be collaboration with your divine partner, and your divine partner is the cosmos, and the thoughts and ideas that you emanate and what you send out and what you receive. Just like a receptive womb, your mind is like a womb, and it receives these ideas and gestates them, and then you create them and you manifest them. This is all supposed to be divine co-creative partnership. So along about now is when I usually I start much earlier, is when I start to talk about those pesky occupiers of the interstices. And I'm trying to give more balanced presentation here, because just like in the newspaper, how many times something is mentioned in an article or in a newspaper, it's part of the editorial power of saying something over and over and over. So I do not mean to be giving humans a distorted view of what's going on in the world by giving so much emphasis, by overemphasizing that there are occupiers of the interstices, and these are the overlords of humanity, and they've been, they diminished the human genetic code, and they've been diminishing the free flow of energy and awareness through the time field for a long amount of time. Like, I don't mean to be like chiseling that in stone over and over, but it's an important point to make, and it relates to our present predicament, what we have to be, transcending our limitations here. Why do we have these limitations? And it also relates to how we can use the flying rainbow lasagna as a tool for liberation, for genetic liberation. And it's like being able to become a genetic virtuoso. All of the things that were intended to be limiting you and making it so that you were easily controlled, mind on a leash, like a domesticated dog, we can transcend. And now think about a dog. Why do humans want dogs? Well, I mean, more, not just for hugs and love and dog kisses, but think about, a long, long, long time ago, why would humans partner up with dogs? And it's because, hey, something? Dogs have big, giant mouths with big, sharp teeth, and humans actually don't have that. And it can be very effective to partner up with a animal that has big sharp teeth, and that is like, hey, I'll build a fire over here, you can sleep by my fire and stay warm in this cave with me, and if any other animals come along, you can bite them for me, and I'll even share my food with you. And this is like the beginning of domestication. So you can understand how this relationship developed. So humans have their own version of the aspects of self that are desirable. Why would one partner up with some kind of genetic invader? It's because it wasn't necessarily a willing choice. It wasn't necessarily a voluntary choice. But those genetic invaders sensed a value in innate human potential. And the value is the creative capacity, your ability to imagine and envision what is not there. So this is different. Animals are very beautiful and very magical beings all on their own, but they have a different type of mind than the human mind. They don't think about time, and they don't think about things that aren't there directly in front of them. So like, I, as a human, can sit here in 2017 and I could think about, I'm just arbitrarily choosing Ben Franklin, a person from hundreds of years ago. And that is not the way like a lion, or I'm envisioning that is not the way that a lion in Africa, walking on the beautiful savannah there, would not be thinking about some other lion from hundreds of years ago. They have a different level of experience that is much more profoundly focused in the moment now. So just like my little analogy with Pac-Man and the idea of diluting one's attention, our attention is meant to be totally focused on this moment right now, like a laser light focus. In fact, lasers reading the surface of a CD or DVD is the exact analogy of our awareness accessing the potential of the song of our life in the time field. We're supposed to have a laser-like, needle of awareness that focuses on just this moment right now. And that's what we do. When we meditate, we are focusing down our attention into this moment right now. And We're not focusing on whatever happened in third grade if somebody pushed you on the playground and gave you a bloody knee. And we're also not grasping forward into the future in order to say, what's going to happen next week? What's going to happen next year? What's going to happen in 13 billion years? That all of that disperses attention and dilutes the focus of your consciousness, and that we become much more powerful and effective at maneuvering in the time field when we focus our attention on the present moment right now. So those genetic invaders that occupy the interstices, I also call them the peanut gallery, they're intrusive thoughts, and their whole gig, everything that they're all about, is distracting all of us embodied musicians from the present moment now. So like sometimes I'm trying to play my piano, I'm grooving, I'm listening to a good song, I'm loving it, I'm grooving, and there's intrusive thoughts that come in, and they either try to say, you're not a good player, or oops, you just made a mistake, or you're gonna make a mistake. And all of those thoughts, that first of all, they are not arising from me, they're definitely external, they're the peanut gallery, they're gremlins, they're trying to come in and make a small energetic investment, like their little comment, and receive back a large energetic harvest. So like in the stock market, you want to invest $10 and get back $100. These little psychic gremlins want to invest a little mean comment and then get back or be able to harvest out lots and lots of negative emotional energy. Like if you get angry and you get riled up and you stop playing the piano because, some inner critic is criticizing you, that's how they win. So what we need to do is to maintain our own coherence, our own inner structure. And that's just like if you are singing in a choir and you're trying to sing a lovely note and someone next to you is singing the wrong note, and you have to maintain the coherence of your own mind and your own system. So that's a big part of like we're learning lessons here. This is a schoolhouse. I like to joke we're in the one room schoolhouse of the cosmos. There is a purpose for us being here, and we are actually learning valuable skills that are transferable when we go to our next experience, because we won't always be humans living on Earth in this experience. We will take the emotions and the experiences that we had here and distill it into like a easily carried format and bring it with us to the next experience. And then just like, you stuff everything into your carry-on bags, you go to your destination, then you unpack your suitcases and all of those wonderful things come out, and you can actually, apply them to your next place. You can actually put on your outfits in your next place where you go. So one of the lessons that we are learning here in this individuated body in this context is how to maintain your own frequency, how to continue to be your own divine, unconditional, loving frequency being submerged in the time field and focused on the moment now, even while there are all of these distractions and the comments from the peanut gallery and the gremlins. So it requires, and when I say coherence, this is the focus of light. The difference between a regular beam of light, like that comes out of a flashlight and is shaped like a cone, and a laser light is coherent, and all of the peaks and all of the troughs fit together. The ups and the downs all fit together, and that they are all traveling in the same arrangement. They're like soldiers, right foot, left foot, right foot, left foot. They can travel a lot further through space because of they're in unison. So they are a laser light going through space. If it was not acted upon, like if it didn't hit an object, it would just continue to travel endlessly. So this is the idea that we are accreting light. Accretion, this is gathering together, growing it together. We grow our light body in this physical format, and we also become coherent light. Means we are organizing our light structure into organized waves. Organized waves is music. We are organizing our time structure of our bodies into coherent light, and that's organized, non-physical belief system and time structure. And that will allow us to travel very far when we are ready to travel. And the traveling very far, it is a consciousness journey. So drop any of the ideas of getting into a clank metal spaceship and, flying with rocket power somewhere. It's not that type of a journey. It is a soul migration. The same way that, Canada geese, they go from one continent to another, or the butterflies, like monarch butterflies that migrate from North America to Mexico and then back to North America over the course of an entire year and several generations. These are soul migrations that we are talking about. So a soul migration, this could be, a group of beings that come to a planet, and like planet Earth, and work together in the symphony of life, have a bunch of experiences, and then transcend that experience and go into a new experience. But it doesn't necessarily mean that you're leaving your body, and it doesn't necessarily mean that you're leaving your planet. So, I often speak about on this show the antediluvian sophisticated worldwide culture that I remember, what would be called the mythological realm of Atlantis, but which was actually, it wasn't just a continent, it was on our entire planet, and it was also sophisticated and connected to the rest of galactic civilization. So that's just like saying, right now, if something's going on in New York, a person in India can know all about it. It doesn't matter if they're separated by thousands of miles. It's easy to pick up the phone or do a video Skype and you can learn all about it. That is what life was like in Atlantis, or the antediluvian world, before the degradation of the genome. If you lived on a planet, it doesn't mean that you were only limited to talking to the people that were around you on that particular planet at that particular time. You could talk to ancient people, you could talk to future people, and you could talk to far distant people. And that was considered to be a normal part of life, just like if you're here on the planet right now and you live in India, you can easily call New York, or you can call any place. You can probably call Antarctica if you had their phone number. So it is not necessary to fly off the surface of your Earth and laboriously travel all the way across vast reaches of interstellar space to go to another planet and then stick out your hand and say, hi, nice to meet you. Let me introduce myself. I'm a human and I'm also coated with, Earth microbes and I'm infecting your planet. That's not the only way to have an interaction. So it is possible to be on Earth and be communicating and sharing ideas and even sharing aspects of energy with beings that are far distant. So I'm also getting across the idea, like when I talk about how experts do star travel, that this is there's ethics involved in this. Just like in our world, we have boundaries of our home. And so I got my home here, and then I have my neighbors that live across the street over there. And it's totally inappropriate if I'm hungry, if I'm like, just go into my neighbor's refrigerator and get some of their food. No, social contract, totally not appropriate. So we have these boundaries where it is like we have decided the right way to use resources and interact with each other. Well, let's say I'm like, hey, I want a bunch of diamonds. I'm really greedy, and you've got a bunch of diamonds on your planet. So how about I just hop, skip, and jump across the street, and I can take all of the diamonds off of your planet, and I can do whatever I want with them. That is not cool. That's like saying, my neighbor has a refrigerator full of food, and I'm just going to go there and take it. These are barbarian values. I have to tell you that, I'm a cultural outsider. It might sound critical or untoward. I have to tell you, this world is a world of barbarian values. This is like from the time of Genghis Khan. A good barbarian is a strong barbarian. To the victor go the spoils. He who has the gold makes the rules. Only the strong survive. These are barbarian values, and they used to be applied in this world in terms of like muscle power. The person with the biggest muscles got to dominate everyone else and got to make the rules and got to, impregnate the women or take the resources or do whatever they wanted. And now, instead of physical muscles, it is economic muscles. You flex your money, like you flex your wallet. And that is how humans in this time and place exert their authority and control and manipulate other people. So very, very little of what we do now is in terms of like personal combat. No one duels to the death anymore. But what they do is they'll have, a business battle or try to do, buy out someone's company or, sabotage in the financial world is how this happens now. So those barbarian values that are being promoted and exhibited here on Earth's surface right now are really indicators that it is not appropriate for this culture in its present format to go and interact with any other cultures that are on a different planet, because it's all about only the strong shall survive. Well, guess what? Maybe there's another planet out there where people exist that are much weaker than the people that are here, and maybe they're actually very valuable. Maybe it is actually appropriate for those people to be in existence, and that the great composer and great conductor of this large symphony of life doesn't just want the loudest instruments to be around. Maybe this great composer-conductor wants all of the instruments to be honored, from the very high piccolos to the very deep kettle drums. And that all of those notes in between, that they're all essential. So it's incredibly dangerous, hubristic pride for humans to think, oh, like, I want to go visit another planet. I'm just going to wrap up all my food, wrap myself up in a tin can with all of my microbes, teeming with microbes, remember, and shoot myself into space. I'm going to slingshot on over to another planet, and then I'm going to hop on out and I'm going to totally infect that planet with whatever I am bringing from my own world. That's just really inappropriate, and it also shows a level of ignorance, like being tone deaf to the rest of the band. That's not so. All the great creator, this great musician composer, is really, really smart and really, really adept at what it is, at what it does, and it created all of these limitations for safety. The idea is, if you need a metal contraption to fly off of your planet and go and interact on another planet, you're not prepared to go to another planet. That it is through self-cultivation and becoming socially sensitive to other organisms and other forms of life, and learning to harmonically integrate with the music of the symphony of life, that one passes the audition. You got to demonstrate that you are worthy of going out and interacting with other forms of life. And because this is not supposed to be just a giant free-for-all. It's not supposed to be like, oh, the Spanish conquistadors are coming from Europe and they're going to come to North and South America and they're going to override everyone, but just in space. It's not supposed to be like that. So that, and I get a bit riled up when I watch some science fiction movies here, in this time and place, and I'm like, these are all just projecting all of the same human frailties and limitations and value systems and violences, but just with lasers in space. Like, that's so boring. It's so very, very boring. It would be so much more interesting to come to some level of emotional resolution and healing on these barbarian values and be able to act differently in an expanded context, because a lot of these barbarian values came from objective materialism and the idea of a limited amount of physical resources. Once we move into this, I say this show, I named it Birth of a New Dimension. We are giving birth to a new dimension. And the new dimension is populated by matter that is imbued with spirit. So this is the end of objective materialism and the idea that your mind does not create reality. Your mind creates reality. So if your mind creates reality, it is not necessary to create a reality where there are limited amounts of resources that you have to fight for access and supremacy with the other people that are in that same level of reality. And who would create a system like that anyway? So the answer is the great one, the great divine musician composer did not create this system of, limitations where there's not enough and there's a lack of abundance and everyone has to have barbarian values in order to survive. That was not created. That was created by the occupiers of the interstices, that these it's literally hell. That is a hell realm, and there's an economy of hell, and the economy on Earth right now has absolutely been patterned and modeled off of the economy of hell. So if the things that we do here are disturbing to you, it is the exact same disturbing thing that goes on in the interstices. In the interstices, there are the beings at the top of the pyramid that are the ones that started the entire company, and everyone else who's new works in the mailroom and is supposed to work their way up, but they never actually make their way. They never actually get ahead. So it's there's not a lot of social mobility, and everybody's trying to get their money from energetic investments. And you and I are the energetic investments. So I'm almost at the end of this broadcast, but I always like to bring up a positive thing to end on. The idea that the flying rainbow lasagna is what we can use to restructure our DNA, restructure our value system, and begin really collaborating from a place of unconditional love. Thank you very much for being with me in this symphony of life.